Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a hard look at the Dutch youth care system, and we're doing it through the eyes of someone who's spent decades on the inside. Social pedagogue Harry Berndsen.
All right, let's just jump right in with a number that, honestly, it just makes you stop and think. 70%. Now, according to our source, this isn't just a statistic. It's a sign of a massive systemic problem. But 70% of what?
So that's what we're talking about. A supervision order, it's a huge deal. It's when the government literally steps into your family life. And Berndsen's claim, based on his own analysis of 150 different cases, is just wow. He's saying that most of the time, this incredibly serious intrusion is completely unnecessary. Okay, so you have to ask, right? How can a system that's supposed to protect kids get it so wrong so often? Well, according to Berndsen, the problem isn't just a few bad apples. He says the flaws are baked right into the process itself, from the very first moment a family gets on their radar. And this is what that journey looks like. It's a four-step path that, on the surface, seems pretty logical. A report is made, that leads to an investigation, then there's some advice given to a judge, and finally a court order. But the argument here is that at every single one of these stages, something is critically broken. So let's start at square one, the very beginning. It all kicks off with a call to an organization called Veilig Thuis, which, by the way, translates to safe home. This is basically the front door to the entire system. So who gets to make that first call? Who can get this whole process started? Well, according to Berndsen, the answer is literally anyone. And they can often do it anonymously. He argues this makes it incredibly easy for the system to be, weaponized. A neighbor you're fighting with, a teacher who has a conflict with the parents, it floods the system with cases that might have absolutely nothing to do with a child's actual safety. Okay, so a report comes in. Veilig Thuis then launches what it calls an investigation. But here's the thing. The source material says that this investigation is often just one or two interviews. I mean, think about it. The parents are already on the defensive, and the agency just doesn't have the resources or the authority to do any real deep dive fact-finding. And what's the result of such a flimsy process? It's right here. Research that Berndsen cites found that a staggering 92% of these initial suspicions of child abuse, they turn out to be completely unfounded. Let that sink in for a second. The vast, vast majority of families who get pulled into this terrifying system are innocent. But what about that other 8%? Or even cases where they're just not sure? Well, if Veilig Thuis has even the slightest doubt, they don't just close the file. No, they escalate it. It goes up to the next level, the Council for Child Protection. Now, this sounds much more serious, right? The Council for Child Protection. This is the official body that gives the final recommendation to the court. But, and this is central to Berndsen's whole argument, their process is just as flawed, maybe even more so than that first step. So let's break this down, because this is a really crucial point. There's a huge difference between a proper scientific investigation and what the source claims is actually happening. A real investigation would involve people with university-level training using sophisticated tools to study family dynamics. But what the council does, he argues, is have social workers, often with vocational, HBO-level training, just conduct some interviews and read over old reports. Berndsen has a name for it, wet finger work. Basically, it's just guesswork. And what do you get from guesswork? You get reports that are filled with speculation, assumptions, and opinions, not cold, hard facts. And Berndsen is really clear on this. He says families will read these official documents about their own lives and think, this isn't us. I don't even recognize this story. Okay, so this flawed report, full of guesswork, makes its way to the final stop in the chain, the child judge. This person is supposed to be the impartial gatekeeper, the ultimate check on the system's power. But here's the fundamental problem, the trap in the system. We might think the judge is an expert in child psychology, but they're not. They're a legal expert, which means they are almost completely dependent on that report from the council. The very same report Berndsen says is so unreliable. And what's worse, according to the source, is that when parents try to fight back by bringing in their own expert witnesses, that evidence is often just brushed aside. And the outcome of all this? It's pretty shocking. In an estimated 95% of cases, the judge simply goes along with the council's recommendation. So according to the source, this system isn't really being checked at all. It's just rubber stamping its own flawed conclusions. So, what does this actually look like in real life? What happens when a process that's built on assumptions and guesswork gets rubber-stamped by a court? The human cost can be absolutely devastating. Let's look at a real story from the source material that shows just how badly this can go wrong.
And it all started with something so simple, it's almost unbelievable. A mother just needed to reschedule an appointment with a social worker. The social worker said yes to a new date, but they forgot to tell the Council for Child Protection. So all the council saw was a missed appointment. They went to the judge and said the mother was refusing to cooperate. Just based on that one single piece of false information, a judge signed off on an emergency order. And that very same night, 10 officials, 4 police officers, and 6 youth care workers showed up at this woman's house to take her 12-year-old child. Can you even imagine being that child? You're 12 years old, and suddenly there's a crowd of strangers and police officers at your front door. The child did what any terrified kid would do. They panicked, jumped the back fence, and ran.
And the mother, the one who just tried to reschedule a meeting, she was arrested, put in a cell. Why? For obstructing the process and, get this, for abducting her own terrified child. It's a complete nightmare, all stemming from one simple miscommunication.
And look, this isn't just 1 or 2 horror stories. Berndsen makes the point that this is a systemic issue. The Netherlands actually has one of the highest rates in all of Europe for placing children in out-of-home care, way higher than countries like France. This points to a system that is, you could say, quick to intervene. So you have to ask, why? Why the tendency to intervene so heavily? Well, the source points to something he calls perverse financial incentives. See, a supervision order brings in about 13,000 euros for an institution, per child, per year. A full out-of-home placement, that can cost society anywhere from 70 to 100,000 euros a year. When there's that much money involved in intervention, it really makes you question the motivations behind these decisions. And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? It's the final, crucial question we're left with after looking at this critique. If the investigators are untrained, if the reports they write are flawed, and if the judges are almost totally dependent on those flawed reports, then who is this system truly protecting?